Parents have had enough of the trans agenda taking over the lives of their kids. From beauty pageants to story time to the sporting arena, children of all ages are having their education and opportunities infiltrated by trans ideology, which is making everyday parents very angry. And gone are the days of parents being too scared to speak up for fear of cancellation. Now they've had enough and they're making their voices heard. Sky News All Stars Rowan Dean, Storer and Piers Morgan exposed the toxic trans takeover. Sport has always been the most prolific battleground for the trans debate. Leah Thomas sparked the discussion with her stratospheric rise from an average male swimmer to the #1 female swimmer in the NCAA championships. Since then, the participation of trans athletes competing in women's sports has skyrocketed. And despite backlash, the trend has continued, with dangerous consequences, says Sky News All-Star Rowan Dean.
One of the tragic outcomes of the radical transgender, gender fluidity, 54 genders theory nonsense that has been foisted on our unsuspecting and gullible school kids and their parents in Western societies has been the way allowing biological boys, men, to compete with girls and women has been devastating to the dreams and ambitions of those aspiring young athletes. Many girls have simply abandoned sports out of a sense of futility. But it's not just the medals they may miss out on that is the real nightmare facing these distraught young women.
My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall biological male, fully intact with male genitalia, 18 times per week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. When we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Leah's swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male.
Whoa, quote, "We were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male." Let that sink in. Imagine if that was your daughter. This is the modern left, non-negotiable.
Only last week, a biological male dominated a female athletics race, reveals Sky News All-Star Storer.
Just recently, this week, another case of a biological boy competing in girls' sports was gracing the newspapers. Here's the Daily Mail headline. This fellow had ranked 172nd as a guy, but now competing as a girl, he ranks 4th in the state. Here's some footage of him competing at the girls' 5K cross-country competition.
Way to keep, bro! Way to keep, bro! Nice job, bro!
So guy, running in a girls' race. Imagine how you'd feel as a parent. Imagine how you'd feel as one of the other competitors who's trained for this and whose college future could depend on where you place in this race. It goes on and on and on. Supreme Court, do something about it.
And unsurprisingly, a transgender powerlifter smashed the women's record in Canada, says Sky News All-Star Chris Kenny.
And in Melbourne, as we speak, Susie O'Brien from the Herald Sun is still with us, and Stephen Senatiempo in Canberra, breakfast host of Radio 2CC. I want to show both of you a little moment in sport. We're speaking about women's sport and how brilliantly it's going for Australia at the moment. Let's have a look at this athlete winning a record in women's weightlifting in Canada. That's Anne Andres, 40 years old, a biological male who's a transgender woman now, identifies as a woman, and just smashed that record. A lot of the women didn't bother competing against her. Susie, is this fair play?
I don't think it's fair play, and I think it undermines the status of a lot of legitimate trans athletes who have to meet a lot of rules in terms of hormones or anything else so that there's a level playing field. If you've got a man who says, I'm a woman, I can compete with other women, and then they go and beat them by 200 kilograms, it's an absolute farce. And I think it doesn't do women any service. It certainly doesn't do trans athletes who are working hard to be on the same biological level as women. It's just a complete and utter debacle, and I think the female weightlifters of Canada have got every right to feel completely ripped off by this complete farce.
And then that same person released a video mocking female powerlifters, which fellow competitor April Hutchinson told Sky News host Piers Morgan incited hate.
Anne Andres, who is a biological male who's transgendered, currently holds 4 of the 5 provincial records, the highest deadlift of all ages in Canada. If Anne Andrews competed with males, then she would place around 6,000. Right there is the inequality, the unfairness that we're seeing in many sports, but particularly a sport like yours.
Yeah, so you have powerlifting, which is a pure strength sport. Males have an advantage of 60 to 70% advantage over females. You hear Anne talking about the bench press. Why is bench press so weak for females? We're not designed for bench press. We don't have the right muscle mass for a bench press, so therefore we will be weaker.
When you hear her mocking, really, the whole situation, how does that make you feel?
I mean, it's the whole thing is disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's disheartening. It's even more disheartening that the Federation allows this to happen. I am the one being punished for speaking truth, yet he can mock females and say, call me a bigot, incite hate, and nothing's being done about that. But I'm the one being silenced by my federation.
And when World Aquatics tried to create a fair playing field by creating an open category where trans athletes could compete against each other, their efforts failed spectacularly, with not one athlete opting in. Sky News All-Star Ollie London echoed these concerns, saying trans athletes are trying to take away the rights of women.
The real issue is, people trying to take away the rights of women, because women have fought for decades to have their own sports. Women have fought to have their sports on an equal footing with men, because, still women's sports today, they're not watched as much with higher audience figures as men's sports. So women have really fought for this for so long. So it's the fact that these athletes are trying to take this away from women when they have the right to compete in their biological category. And indeed, there are some organisations now proposing this. Some cycling races are now having open men's categories where transgender, non-binary athletes can compete, which I think is fair, because at the end of the day, everybody has the right to compete in sports. Nobody wants anyone to be excluded, but it's simply about fairness, because we know biological boys have an advantage. So that's why Fairness First organisation is very pivotal for trying to defend the rights of women.
The trans agenda has also infiltrated education, with drag storytime being labelled as sick by Sky News contributor Prue McSween.
I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but you've got to shake your head. So librarians in Victoria now have to have anti-violence training. They're being intimidated and trolled, they say, all because they've made a decision to have these drag time storytelling things for kids. Now, rather than have to have all of this training for violence and protesters, a lot of them are from the left, of course. How about they just not have the drag queens and story time and kids?
Exactly, don't have it. I tell you who would love drag time and story time at the old people's homes, Peter. Go and entertain them. They would love a drag queen to come
Fair
in
point.
and
Fair
sing
point.
to. But no, they're not harassing the aged care homes. They're going after kindergartens and libraries. Disgraceful.
I don't like that. I don't like it at all.
The whole concept, I'm picturing karate librarians. I mean, these mild-mannered bookworms are going to suddenly become experts in self-defence. But, you know, I think this is so insidious, this creep of sexualising our kids and you know, teaching them about dysphoria. So
shut it
gender,
down.
you know, it's just all sick, and I think parents need to be really vigilant about this now. You're getting to the stage where you don't want to send your kid to a school, and now it's a library. There's no safe place for kids at the moment because these people have got an agenda to force their views, these woke views, on little children. Let them decide when they're adults, not now, when they're little kids.
And parents agreed, with a drag queen story time in Melbourne being derailed by protests in a bid to stop the event.
Well, a local council meeting in Melbourne has been derailed by protesters angry over a planned drag story time in Melbourne southeast. Georgia Simpson has the story for us this morning. She's at Monash City Council. Georgia, what happened last night?
Pete, a crowd of about 100 people gatecrashed the public gallery, yelling out to councillors that they were pedophiles, demanding for them to be sacked. This is all over an event planned for May 19 at a library in Melbourne's southeast, involving drag queen Sam Thompson reading books and singing songs to children to mark the International Day Against Homophobia. This event has sold out, but some residents are very angry about it. In recent days, there's been a lot of negative comments on Monash City Council's Facebook page, with Senator Ralph Babbitt among them. The council must have anticipated that something might happen, as last night there was extra security and police already on hand. This crowd of about 100 people, you might be able to see in the vision there, they were angry, they were holding up signs, they were yelling out that councillors were pedophiles, demanding for them to be sacked over what they say they were promoting sex among or in front of children. Council, though, they refuse to back down, and they're not cancelling what they are labelling as a family-friendly event.
Georgia Simpson, thank you.
Pageants have become the latest victim of trans ideology, with a biological man beating the field of women to win Miss Netherlands.
All right, I got to show you this. Some of the most beautiful women in the world are from the Netherlands, so it only makes sense that Miss Netherlands 2023 was awarded to a biological man. Trans woman Ricky Valerie Colley is the first male to win the female title in 94 years. I think, Caleb, that's because it didn't occur to anyone until about 3 minutes ago to award the best looking female to a biological man. Ricky will now go on to compete in Miss Universe.
And parents have become increasingly concerned about the trans movement after seeing its progression from relatively harmless story time and sports competitions to dangerous, fashionable mutilation of the body, reveals Sky News commentator Tim Blair.
This is grotesque and terrifying. I think everyone would agree. Actual scars, non-medically required scars, are now being worn and celebrated and made as images of some sort of progressive stance. I mean, look at that. That's wrong.
And it's been also in video games. I can't remember the name of the video game where there were characters with those scars, and they are to represent, like you said, a female to male transition. And at the same time, we're hearing these stories, these terrible stories from detransitioners. I've talked to some young Chloe Cole, only at the age of 18, decided that no, this was not for her. She's living as a woman again, but her breasts were removed when she was 15. How can you possibly make an informed decision at that age? But she's now got lifelong medical issues because of that.
And politics aren't immune. The focus on transgender issues is having real political ramifications for the Democrats.
The more immediate question, I think, for both parties is to try to win over the swing voters in the working class, many of whom don't pay much attention to politics. They don't read the Wall Street Journal, they don't read the New York Times. And I think, various factors, basically push them away. And one of those might be cultural issues. I mean, I think that's a real reason why a lot of lower income Americans, especially immigrant families, are no longer so drawn to the Democrats, even if their economic policies may be better for them in the short run. But all the talk of, transgender bathrooms and transgender women and all this stuff, it can be very alienating for, for some conservative lower class people.